Remember this, for everybody watching, the best people are always working. The best guys are not unemployed. So if you're putting ads out and you're going to ZipRecruiter or whatever, you're going to be getting guys who are on the bench for a reason. I'm a daddy's boy, and all I cared about was getting an attaboy. We have that saying over here, like a good job, a pat on the back for pops, right? And so I'd rather die than let my family down. And so for contractors to get into the bigger game, there's a lot that they need to know and understand. And the only thing that they know is their contemporary contractors who are also either budding or have extremely bad habits or dysfunctional and disorganized.
Marshall is an absolute genius when it comes to the construction industry, and he has done $2.5 billion in sales, which if you try and find like more than 5 people out there that have done that, you're gonna really, really struggle, right? So Marshall, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Introduce yourself, tell the people what you've done, what you do right now.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here. The School of Builders podcast, right up my alley. So I'm Marshall Wilkinson, and I'm a second generation contractor, construction manager, and consultant. I've been kind of born into this business. New York City, union, large scale, public works contracting is all I know. I make a joke and say that I knew how to run a wastewater treatment plant project when I was in the high chair. That's all I ever heard my whole life growing up. So this is the only business that I know, and I was able to enter the business in my 20s, scale a business from around 15 to 20 million to over 100 million. And then I exited in 2019 and started my consulting company, ALP, which what I do now is I consult contractors on how to scale their contracting. Excuse me.
Nice, awesome, no worries. So, Marshall, you did start in commercial contracting, right? And the behemoth contracting company that you are really one of the heads of the table of. What differentiated them and allowed them to be as successful in comparison to other companies who maybe don't even get going, especially in the commercial industry?
Okay, well, how much time you got?
We have as much time as we need.
So, I mean, our business has a lot of moving pieces, and it has a lot of people that are necessary and that are constantly in play. You know, we deal in the flesh and material business, in labor and material. And outside of labor and material at the higher level is massive risk. And so it's all about managing risk. Almost the construction portion is tertiary. What matters most is schedule and contract, risk management and financing, and aligning yourself with the contract and the owner. And then the work gets done vis-a-vis project managers and superintendents and foremen and the trained labor that's in the field. You know, one of the advantages of being union, and I don't know how strong the unions are over by you, but where I'm from in New York, the unions are very strong, especially with public work. Not so much anymore with the commercial work that's going on, but in the public sector, it's union. And union labor is the best trained labor. These guys go to union labor school for 4 years after work when they're in the apprenticeship program. So the work gets done very well. Everyone knows how to read drawings. They know how to prosecute work. They know how to prosecute very heavy work, you know, big work, and they could kind of work autonomously. And there's an esprit de corps within union workers. Think about it. If you were the best football player, right, you wouldn't want to play for like a secondary team. You'd want to go and play in a professional league because you're the best. You want to get the most amount of money. Well, union pays the most. And so because it pays the most, it has a tendency to attracting the best guys in the game. You know, there are jokes about union because they get a bunch of different breaks because there's union rules. And so non-union guys will make fun of them and say union takes too long. It's not true. Union are the best trained guys, and they're the safest guys. And that's what matters most, that you go to work and you go home. You go to work and you go home. When you build non-union in New York City and it's all about schedule constraints and how fast you can put a building up in the air, men die. And that is not a way to run a contracting company or to build a project. Nobody deserves to die going to work. So union is incredibly safe and they're incredibly competent. And because we're a union signatory, it affords us the luxury of focusing on getting more work and focusing on risk management because the labor portion is handled. If I call the business manager and I say, I need 20 electricians there tomorrow, there will be 20 electricians there tomorrow. Whether they're off the bench or they're guys from Connecticut and New Jersey or Pennsylvania, they're called travelers and they pulled them off the benches of the unions in the tri-state area, I will have 20 guys here tomorrow. If I'm a self-performing contractor, non-union, I have manpower constraints and I can only scale to the extent of my manpower. When you're a union contractor, that is something to take into consideration, but it isn't necessarily something that will hold you back from scaling. So we were all automatically, by being union, put in a position where we could focus more on the business aspect of the business rather than truly being focused on the manpower portion of the business, which non-union contractors focus on. They limit the amount of work they could take on. They're focused on their manpower constraints. Their head is too much in the field and not enough on the business side, building the brand, pushing the company forward, creating relationships with bigger corporate players to do more commercial work, to dialing in, estimating operations and database of man hour and labor units so we can really get dialed in on our pricing to win bids at low bid, because it's low bid, rip them and read them in New York, right? So we had that going for us. And we were all second generation guys. It's my family and another family. And so the children, which is myself and the other guys, we were college educated guys. We had a synergy between us and we were all very competitive in playing to win. We cared about being the best. And because we were young, we had a chip on our shoulders in a business and in an industry that doesn't have young people in it. It's dominated by older players, older men. Every seven in the United States, every 7 persons that retires from construction, 1 replaces them. So we're at an extremely diminished capacity as far as onboarding new people. So in every meeting, we're the youngest guys. We're at the helm of a business as the youngest guys. Everybody's expecting us to blow it. So because of that, we were very cognizant about being over-prepared and being the sharpest guys at the room. Because if you're the youngest guy, you automatically have that against you because they don't think you have experience, because experience is associated with snow on the roof. And we're sitting there without gray hair. And so the way we knew that we would excel and owners would be confident in us is if we were dialed in and we were the sharpest guys. So we focused on knowing everything about our business, everything about contracting. I went to law school to learn everything about contracts and how to negotiate those contracts. I also have an executive MBA. The CEO, who's also my contemporary, has an MBA, and we ran it like a business, and we managed risk and finances. So just from the perspective of how we attacked the business, we were already at an advantage compared to our competitors who were other family business regional players, because they were more focused on, the tools. And my father used to always tell me the root word of contractor is contract, Marshall. It's not wire nuts. It's not screwdriver. It's contract. You being great at the business is what's going to push this company forward. And we were all aligned in that. And we had an esprit de corps. And we were aggressive and vicious. And we were out for victory.
Yeah, I can definitely tell from the way you speak and the way you come across. You were definitely driven even when you were young. I mean, obviously you're definitely probably more driven now, but what would you say the difference is between Marshall back then and how old you were back then, and like the kids nowadays who are probably the same age or used to be the same age as you were?
Well, it's just interesting. I'm probably less driven today than I was back then. I mean, I had a very big shadow to overcome, which is my father and his legacy. I'm a daddy's boy, and all I cared about was getting an attaboy. We have that saying over here, like a good job, a pat on the back from your pops, right? And so I'd rather die than let my family down. And when I was sent out to go do something, I was coming back with a scalp. I was going to go and hand out the toe tags, and I was coming back with a victory tomorrow. There's no way I'm looking at my dad saying we didn't win. And so I was constantly under stress to perform, but that's how I was groomed. So, you asked the differences between, kids today and when I started. Remember, I got into the C-suite of the business at 26. So I was like in my mid-20s when I actually got in a position of power and authority. And from 26 to 38, I was like a raw nerve ending. So I would say I was probably more focused then than I am now, to be quite honest. And I push it hard now. But back then it was madness. I got taken out of my office in a stretcher on numerous occasions due to panic attacks and stress. And so it was a different animal when you're dealing with family money and high stakes, and you've got to kind of be perfect, right? Because one bad job will take you out. But I didn't have a choice, man. I was groomed to be in this business. And I was, our upbringing is what forms us. And my upbringing was around very alpha male type World War II and Vietnam era men. That's who my dad hung out with. Those were the people who he employed and who he worked with. That was my environment. So I was groomed to be a very specific type of person to go into this very unique type of business. Where all my friends went to Wall Street, I went and got an education and then went into the dirt. So it was different, but I didn't really necessarily have a choice. I knew that this is what my destiny was, and that I was destined to do something bigger than the guys who came before me.
Yeah. And, it's an interesting dynamic because I think nowadays parents are a lot more lenient with their kids, and they're a lot more like, son, you do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, you go do whatever you want. If you want to play video games all night, or if you want to do this job or that job. But do you think you could have got to the point where you got to without that shadow looming over you, or without?
No way. Absolutely not. No. The fear of my dad and the wanting to please him and understanding what type of man he is. He's still alive and he's my best friend, but this is a very difficult person to please who has very high standards, is extremely intelligent. You're not going to pull one over on him. And in fact, he would never have a son that would be a wimp. It just wouldn't happen. It can't grow in the environment I grew up in.
Yeah. And what you're doing right now, it seems like, because the thing is, I know you said you're less driven now than you were back then, but I think you've earned that right with what you've done. Like the most successful people in the world, whether you're looking at the complete high level, whereas Elon Musk, Bill Gates, whatever you want to say, they've earned the right to relax now than they were maybe in the beginning when Jeff Bezos was in his small, tiny office in the US, with all these piles of papers and on his desks. And, at times he probably didn't know whether it was going to work out or not. But now you've probably got that. And I think that's what you're trying to do with ALP, right? You're trying to basically show that experience that you've built over all the years, and you're trying to instill the systems and the mental brain power that you've gained from that.
Correct. You don't know what you don't know. And so for contractors to get into the bigger game, there's a lot that they need to know and understand. And the only thing that they know is their contemporary contractors who are also either budding or have extremely bad habits or dysfunctional and disorganized. And they need to, I think, in this business, to make the best of our country's talent come back into the business, which is really what my mission is. I mean, I am extremely driven in what I'm doing. It's just in a different manner. I'm not under the state of duress that I was for like 15 years. So when I say I'm not as driven, I kind of mean I don't have the gun to my head where every day is a life or death type of scenario, because, and I'm not exaggerating that. When you're working on jobs that are 100 million, my first project was $300 million. It's Pattagate Basin. It's a New York City DEP project. It's a CSO project. You could Google it. It was a great project. There's a lot of stress when you're in that scenario, and there's consent decrees that are coming down from the state. If you don't hit schedule, the DEP is going to get fined, and then they're going to pass that fine on to you. If you get liquidated damages, then you get Vendex, which means I can't bid another job again for the city. So you might as well go out of business. So that was constantly looming, and I'm a person who gets into the weeds of things. I really believe in getting into details. I'm not a high level guy. Like, oh, let's just keep everything high level and at essential casting with perfect teeth and a perfect suit, and I just smile and shake hands. That's not the man that I am. I'm in the weeds. I need to get into the detail. So that's the difference between then and now. But with ALP, I really want to be a beacon of light for contractors to show them what's possible, to show them that there's a bigger game, to teach them how to get to that bigger game. And it's not as hard as they think. There's just certain things that need to be put in place. And that's why I'm not a coach. People will say, hey, are you a coach? They ask me, or they might think I'm a coach. I'm not a coach. I'm a consultant. Consultant does work product. I'm an educator. A coach is the guy that tells you what to do and run plays and go run the play. And if you can't, he whips you with a wet noodle. I'm not like that with my clients. I'm involved in the business. I get into their sock drawer. I help them with things. I give them work product and do work product for them so they can see it. And then once they see it, they can replicate it, if that makes sense. So I'm really more of a consultant than anything else, but I think ALP will be a beacon to contractors who are looking to scale, because everybody else out there does not have this experience. So if you want to be a $100 million contractor and you're buying stuff on automating your business from a guy who's got a $10 million construction company, that's not going to help you. By the way, full disclosure, there is no automating to this business. Anybody who wants to sell you an automated system for your construction company is total bunk. We're doing $1 billion worth of work. None of it's automated. Okay. All of it is hands-on, white knuckle, in control of the business, because when you take your hands off the steering wheel and you try to automate that business, you're going to go bankrupt. I have to be involved in everything and all the details because everyone else is an employee and they're not looking at my money that way. They're looking at getting a check and going home. So if you've got $100 million of your family money at risk in the street and you believe that you can leave that up to automation, then send me the drugs that you're smoking. It's just an admission that you've never played at that level. You don't know that. Now, there are things you can automate. You can automate systems for financial systems for project management and scheduling, but you can't automate the business. My dad has a saying, and the saying is the fish rots at the head. And that means it all ends with the leadership. The fish rots at the head. So if you're an absentee owner and believe that you could automate the business and as an absentee and hang out on a beach somewhere, you're not going to have that business very long. Fish rots at the head. I still know guys in their contracting company that are 70 years old, still in the office at 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's the business we're in. And so if you don't want to be that guy, that's fine. You don't have to. But if you want to scale to be a major player, you can't get that out of you. Like the amount of drive that's required to be a big player is contra to the person who wants to sit on a beach. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like people say, I work hard now so I could rest later. Well, if you ever have the idea of resting later, you're not built strong enough to even get to that point where you can rest. You only get the high level because you want to dominate and continue to win and be a champion. And that doesn't leave you at 60 years old. You know what I mean? You want to keep competing. Jordan came back. The greats always come back for one more. Tyson's going to be in a ring with Jake Paul in July. You can't take that championship drive out of a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no automation.
So right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so right. And people who try and put timescales and they try and get rich quick, so to speak, or try and build something off the back of no foundations, they very quickly crumble, like very, very quickly. And I'm sure you know who Alex Hormozi is, but there's a very famous clip of him where, everyone knows he's got acquisition.com, right? And he has this whole process before he invests in a company or buys a company. And there was someone that he was talking about who got to the final stages where Alex was going to buy an equity in his company. And one of the questions that the other guy asked was, Alex, what can I get to in 5 years' time? Or can you get to me to XYZ point in 5 years' time? And Alex just went, you're off the table. The deal's off the table. We're done. We're not doing this anymore. And then he just asked, why? What did I say? And he's like, if you're trying to put timescales on these goals and you're trying to do it in a certain period of time where you're almost rushing, it never happens, because you just, like you said, you relax and you think you can get to a certain point, and then boom, it's done. You can relax and you go to a beach on a random island in the Caribbean, and you can just relax the rest of your life. But that's not how business
No,
works.
that's not how this business works. At least, I mean, maybe
Hmm.
Wall Street or something, but that's not how most business works.
Yeah.
There's no free lunch in life.
Hmm.
But that's a good thing, because I have my identities wrapped up in business. People know me as the business guy. It's just who I am. I'm a contracting guy. I do deals. I'm a business person, and I get my satisfaction from achievement. I don't get my satisfaction from relaxation. I get my satisfaction from accomplishing things, of being of use. And if I can't be of use, then I'm useless. And I don't want to be useless sitting on a beach. I want to be of use to people and add value to any scenario and situation that I'm involved in.
Yeah, for sure. In regards to in regards to ALP, and because I notice you have an amazing social media profile, you can produce amazing content and really great advice,
Thank
and you
you.
probably get traction from all sorts of different levels of people who run construction businesses, of contractors. Maybe they've just literally started out, like maybe they were, a foreman in a company, and now they want to start their own contracting business. What does it take, and what is the difference between the stages from going, for example, from 6 to 7 figures, from 7 to 8, and then obviously you were playing at the 8 and 9,
Yes.
multi 9 figure run rate? What is the difference that it takes at those different stages?
Well, it's going to take people, okay, but it's no good bringing on people if you don't get better. So, like the $1 million contractor versus the 5 million, and the 5 versus the 10 million, the difference is in the player. So you're playing at a higher game, but you're playing at a higher game because you're a better player. The pace picks up, the speed of the game gets faster, the risks get greater, and that requires a different iteration of you. And then you're going to need people to scale, but if you're not ready to be a leader and you're not that person yet, you're going to fail. You have to become that guy or gal, so to speak. So the difference in the big companies is the quality of the people that are playing on the field. The smaller guys, they might have potential, but they're not spending their time making themselves better business people. And that's the key difference. Having confidence in yourself by having an education on how the big game is played, having confidence by understanding how to navigate those waters, and constantly growing yourself as a business person. And that's what gets lost in our field. We get so focused on the field dynamics that we forget that this is a business. And like any business, we've got to be leaders. We have to build a brand so we can recruit the best talent. We need to have an accounting department. Our books need to be tight. We need a CFO. We need to understand that the backbone of our business is contracts. So you've got to have some legal understanding of contracts and have a strength in negotiating those contracts, which is sales and negotiation. And if you've been spending 20 years in the field, then that means you haven't been spending 20 years learning contract, sales, negotiation, accounting, estimating, project management, HR, recruiting, and being a leader. So then there's no, you shouldn't be surprised when you've been in the field for 20 years and then you come into the office and it's a tough go. Well, you've had 20 years doing wire nuts, bending pipe and pulling wire. You're excellent at that. You're not excellent at the business portion. Most contracting companies start from guys coming out of the field. And so they value less the business portion, where in reality, the business portion should be valued more, because we can find subcontractors and or people to perform the labor. The business portion is the most important part of the business. Okay. And that requires you learning that just like you would as an apprentice learning your trade in the field. That's why if you've noticed the life cycle of family-owned contracting companies that are not multinational, that was started from a guy from the field, that person took it to a level of their competency. And usually the second generation, their kids like me, come and blow that thing up. and then the third generation crash it into the ground. That is the cycle, if you've noticed, with contracting companies. And there are a few, like my biggest competitor in New York is EJ. I guess I'm giving them a shout out here, EJ Electric. They're like going on the third or fourth generation. They're the largest family-owned electrical local 3 contractor in New York. Okay, they're an anomaly. They are an outlier because they're third or fourth generation and it continues to scale. Whereas all the other businesses on the third generation, it usually tanks. Because the second generation grew up like I did, middle class with your dad working, and then your socioeconomics starts to increase as the man gets older and gets better at business. You're typically getting older at that time. You've been groomed, then you take this business over, and then you run it up. And when you're running it up, you're starting to make some money. So then your kids are not growing up the way you grew up. They're a little bit softer. They either go to Wall Street or go do something else, or they come into the business and they don't have the grit and the understanding like we did when I was sitting at the dinner table and all I heard about was every project that was going on and what's going wrong and how it's supposed to be ran. Right? So that's typically the life cycle of a contracting company.
Yeah, and what you said is so true, because especially specific to construction, a lot of the people nowadays, especially in the UK, I don't know how it is in the US, but a lot of the kids, very, very few are actually getting back into construction. Most of them don't like that hard labor and, 9 hours in the sun, doing a job, making sure it's done properly, taking your time, making sure the customer's happy, all that hard labor that it takes. They'd rather, sit in front of a computer, maybe go on YouTube, or, they think of other ways or easier ways, so to speak, of making money. And then it's not until they grow older and maybe they are 30s or in their 40s and they're realizing how much money can be made in the construction business because they need their bathroom doing or they need the kitchen doing. And they're like, oh, wow, this is expensive. Like these contracting guys are making a good amount of money. That's usually when everything comes full circle. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, just really quick, piggyback on that point. There are more opportunities today to make money, right? So our best talent will go into the new opportunities that are available out there. But it comes back to you don't know what you don't know. So when you think of construction, what you think of is 9 hours in the sun. You don't think about the other side, the project management and the project executive side of the business, because you haven't had any video into that. You don't know. So if your dad is a carpenter and he has a home improvement business, and all you know is your dad's been on the tools your whole life, you don't have insight into the back office portion of the business and the scalability. So you don't even know that exists. You just think miraculously bridges get built from big multinationals. You're not even making the connection in your brain how that's done and the players that are involved in that. And so then you would go and find another aspect to earn money and build your wealth and take care of your family. And that's what I'm trying to bring to the world, to let people know there's a whole nother game out here and it is available to you. You just don't know that it is. And I can show you how to get there if you believe in yourself and you're ready to really work hard.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that we get a lot in the UK, and I'm assuming it's going to be similar in the US, but a lot of construction businesses and a lot of contractors, they're doing well. Maybe they're doing 7-8 figures a year, right, annually. And when I speak to them specifically, their main bottleneck isn't getting the work, but it's everything else around that. It's creating the system, hiring the right people, building the right systems that can actually take on that work and actually fulfill on it properly without losing money. Because if, like you said before, it's more so in the commercial world, but even in the residential world, if you mess up a job or you do something very wrong, it can cost you a lot of money, especially because your margins are squeezed, and it's not long after that you have to pay out of pocket on something that you've made a mistake on, essentially.
Yeah.
What are the key aspects to someone recruiting the right people, and what are the things they need to look for depending on what level that person is going to slot into?
The number one thing as it relates to recruiting is you got to remember that what you're recruiting is talent. And that's what I need people thinking about. It's not just recruiting to put a warm body in place. We're looking for talent. The best talent goes to the best known guys. The reason why contractors are having issues with getting good people and recruiting talent is because they have not built a brand. To get the best people, you got to build a brand. So if you're a kid that's coming out of college and you want to go to a contracting company, you don't want to be in, let's say you took engineering and you don't want to be a design engineer, you want to be like a field engineer, you want to work in the construction. Well, what are you going to, your mind, you're going to go, I'm going to send my resume to Turner, Hunter Roberts, Bechtel. I'm going to go to Related Properties. I'm going to send it to Tishman. These are companies that have built brands. So the problem with contractors today is that they're not building their brand. The best way to recruit is by building a brand. And the way you build a brand today is by getting in front of a camera. Okay, nobody reads the newspaper anymore. Nobody watches TV anymore. You found me through social because that's where the eyeballs are, right? So if I'm going to build a brand, I have to be where the eyeballs are. And that's the big issue with contractors. They don't get in front of the camera. And if they do get in front of the camera, they do it in a wrong way. All they do is shoot video of their projects, and nobody cares about that. Okay, having some video of your project is good to show what kind of work you do, but every video cannot be about the project. It has to be about you, the leadership, what we stand for, what's our core philosophy, what's our mission. You want people to get to know who you are, and you need to be a dynamic person, a name in the space to build the brand, to then have good talent come out and say, you know what, I'm going to send my resume over to Marshall. Looks like he's doing great stuff. I like that guy. I could learn from him. Now I have a shot at picking up great talent, because you're only going to go as far as your people are good. You're only going to go as far as the game that the people that you have can deploy. We did so well because we all had massive game. We were groomed to be in this business, and we took this deathly serious. Every day was a championship game for us. And that's what I loved about the business. I went to work every day with hyper-competitive men that wanted to win and be victorious in everything that they did. Like, I mean, in a very serious way. So much so that it was almost over the top. How alpha and fraternalistic the atmosphere was. We really wanted to be the smartest and the best, most ruthless and aggressive guys out there. And that's how we were able to accomplish what we did. If we weren't that way, I promise you, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we did. That's for certain. So the biggest problem they have is that they're not building a brand. So then what they're left with are people who are on the bench. Remember this, for everybody watching, the best people are always working. The best guys are not unemployed. So if you're putting ads out and you're going to ZipRecruiter or whatever, you're going to be getting guys who are on the bench for a reason. They either quit, they made a decision to leave, they got fired. No, that's used goods there. You don't want that, right? You want the guy who's already a player somewhere, who knows your brand, who's looking for a greater opportunity, and you have that opportunity available, and you're able to poach better talent, or you're able to get greater talent out of the university system and cultivate them into your system to be a better employee. But nobody's going to do that if they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So that's the big problem.
Yeah. It's so interesting how everything comes full circle, and everything comes back to, a lot of things come back to your brand and what you look like online. And if you have that digital footprint where people can actually find you, consume your content, learn about who you are, and gain that trust, because people buy from people and people work for people they like that. That's just how it works.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. If all you did was see projects of mine, it would just go right through. You would not know who I am. Right. And so you're either going to want to work for me or not work for me based on the brand that I'm building, but I'm building a brand. And some people will be attracted to that. And that's what you want. You want talent. You want people who are actively looking to work for you. So they'll put their best foot forward and actually work for you, not just get a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the incredible thing about this as well is that when it comes to working for someone, like you touched on it before, you talked about how when someone's recruiting, the first place they go to is online job boards or advertising for jobs. And you said it perfectly when you said the best people are going to already be in a job. And they're probably not all going to be in a job, but they're probably going to be in a job for your competitors. They're going to be working for your competitors, and they're going to be working for the best people in the industry, pretty much. So if you really want to have that leverage, because that's what a brand is, it's leverage to hire these people where they might even accept a pay cut to work for you because of your brand and because of the person you are and the person they've seen over and over again on their feeds and on their phones. And that's like the double-edged sword about social media today. There's a lot of people that talk about the negative sides and the bad side of social media and how, it's dopamine central pretty much for your brain. But at the same time, if you use it in the right way, it's the most powerful, and Gary Vee talks about it all the time. It's the most powerful tool any business on the planet can use to grow their own business literally overnight.
I agree.
Yeah, it's incredible. And like I said, it's a coincidence because Gary Vee is releasing his book today on day trading attention, which is all about using social media. So it's interesting. Shout out to Gary.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Let's go down a different route. Not many people talk about this, but it's the mistakes that are made in contracting and the mistakes that are made specifically building a business to exit. Because a lot of contractors, their like finish line, if you like, is exiting their business because they've had in their head, don't want to do this my whole life. I want to exit eventually. What are the mistakes they make when it comes to exiting a business?
Well, the truth about exiting a business is that the only thing that anyone would ever buy is a backlog of work. That's the truth of it as a contracting company. Your people have a value to themselves. There's a value with the people. But if you don't have existing contracts that are ongoing, then there's no value to the business. Nobody wants your tools. Nobody cares about it. If you don't have a backlog of work, then nobody cares about your people, right? So there are certain models in contracting that cannot be exited. They're not sellable. If you're a person who, let's just say, builds homes and you stay in residential and you're the salesperson, you're the owner, you're the number one salesperson, you're the guy that drives all the revenue, well, nobody's going to buy that business. There's no return on my investment. I'm going to have to pay you and earn you out over a period. And when you're gone, if I don't have someone to replace you, the track record that you had before is meaningless to me. So when it comes to exiting a contracting company, the most important thing is having contracts that are in place. So if you're like an emergency restoration contractor, you get contracts of property management companies. They call you when there's an emergency. They call you when there's an issue. Those contracts are typically multi-year duration. That is something that somebody will buy because that is something that will likely give off a return. If you're a contractor like me that does government work, that's what everybody wants to buy. It's guaranteed money because it's government work. It's multi-year. So you could have multi-year backlog, 5-10 years of backlog of work. And then that can be sold because that is something somebody's interested in buying. And then they add the value of your people. Then you put the backlog together and the value of your people. Then that is something somebody would be interested in buying. Maybe even if you've built a brand, the brand awareness itself has a value to it. And then that's something that you can exit. So, if you start contracting and you think about, and you want to exit eventually, you're going to have to think about the model that you choose because most models are not sellable. And that's just the truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear it. Now, sometimes there may be a one-off where, listen, a sucker's born every minute, right? Somebody might buy your company for the trucks and for the tools or whatever, your name. But the big boys on a big exit, they don't want to have anything to do with it because they're not going to get any return on their investment. There's no value in a company that does not have backlog contracts. Because if you're the sole salesperson and you're constantly, the thing in construction you got to remember is every time you get a job, you're working yourself out of a job. So if I get a job, that means the day I start working, that contract is worth less than the day that I got it. We're constantly working ourselves out of something. So if you're doing custom home building and you're the guy who goes out and lands all the deals and you've got only one or two going on, there's no value in that business. Because if I write you a check and you go away, I have to have a salesperson now in place to replicate what you've done. And there ain't enough meat on the bone for that. Or like I said, I've got to earn you out. You got to stay on for 4 years and sell and have skin in the game and make sure that I recoup my investment while I'm earning you out. And then when you're gone, now what? right? What if all the people wanted a new home because they trusted you and you're directly tied and associated with that brand? Now that you're out of the picture, we have no more work. I'm not going to get any return on my investment, right? But if I bought you and you had 5 years of a backlog of New York City contracts, well, there's a value to that. You have 100 million in contracts. You've got people, you've got vans, you have obviously the ability to prosecute that work. Well, now we can assign a multiple to it, and I'd be willing to invest in that to get a return. So exiting a company, a contracting company, is dictated specifically on the model. And it's going to be a model of getting backlog, getting contracts that are multi-year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of not putting themselves in the shoes of the person who's actually buying their company. Like the people you hire, like you said, the tools, anything that you own as part of the company is worthless. Everything that you own as part of the company that's going to make that company money is really what they care about at the end of the day. And like the backlog is also important. Now, I'm going to go down a different path here, and I've noticed we're going towards the latter part of the podcast, and I've not spoken about sales yet, which is something that you're very, very well known for, and
Yes.
it's something that your content really preaches, because a lot of contractors make that mistake, and they make so many mistakes in sales. If it's the part from, before they actually go to the client's house, if it's residential, if it's commercial, obviously you have boardrooms, you have more formal meetings. What are the mistakes a lot of contractors make in sales? And what would you say they need to change about the way they approach sales?
Most contractors are poor salespeople because they're not putting their business hat on. And I think the biggest mistake that they make is they make everything price driven. And contracting, especially on a residential side of things, it's not about price. It's about the competency of the contractor. And that is what needs to get across to people. The common thread throughout all projects that have gone south, that have gone bad in residential contracting, is that the homeowner chose a contractor based on price and not competency. Okay. And you have to lead with that point. Because the second you make yourself a commodity and you make yourself price driven, then you're just transactional and you're a commodity and it's about price and you're going to cut your price and have no margins. That's the biggest complaint that all these contractors have, is they have guys that come in without a license, immigrant workers that come in that cut the margins, and now they say these people have ruined the market. Well, they haven't ruined the market, dude. You just don't know how to advocate yourself and educate your prospect on why going with somebody like that is fool's gold, that you'd rather invest the money to get a return. And the return is a job that's done correct, on time, and on budget. Because every project that somebody chooses a contractor based on price, that is the price that they contract on is not the finished price of the construction. Because they change order you to death, they put you to the wall, or the job goes south, or the guy takes the money and runs for the border. Happens in America all the time. And everyone kind of knows that. But if you're not advocating for that and you're not presenting that angle of approach, you're going to have a very poor time getting your margins and selling. Another thing is contractors don't represent themselves at the highest level. This is my uniform. I wore this every day to work because I'm a business person. Right? So if you're showing up to people's homes disheveled with a Dunkin' Donuts coffee stains and donut stains, or if you're a painter, you come with your jeans and there's paint all over the place. Okay, there's no differentiation between leadership and the guys in the field, because you need Gen Cons in your pricing. Gen Cons are called general conditions. That's what we call them here. That's project supervision. There are costs that erode margins if you're not carrying them. It's not just labor and material, but it's also general conditions. It's also home office overhead. It's the cost of having a project manager on site. All of those things. You can't bake those things into your price and educate your customer if you show up looking like you just dug a ditch and you're sweating to death. You can't. Take a shower, change, and then go meet your client and put your business hat on and represent the highest level. You'll be able to get your margins. A lot of times it's not money. It's that they don't believe you. And then because everyone else carries themselves like a commodity, they're expecting you to be a commodity. But when you're not, it's like a breath of fresh air. because you're performing tasks that people don't know how to do. They don't know how to do it. They're not interested in doing it. It's like sometimes it's like a voodoo science. Okay, how are you going to do this? They don't know. They much rather have a person with massive altitude come in and they say, you know what? I trust this person. I'm going to lean and rely on this person. And I don't mind paying a higher price because I have the confidence that this job is going to get done correctly, on time, and on budget. And so what I pay for is actually going to get done. And that's the argument you have to make when you're selling contracting residentially. But most contractors don't make that argument. They're not even cognizant of it. Most aren't eloquent enough to even make that advocation, unfortunately, and they don't have their business hat on. They've never learned about sales, and they've never learned sales from great contractors. I just want to say as a side point, I learned how to sell by stealing from the guys that I grew up with because they were selling contracting. And I learned how to do it by taking the best from some of the best guys that I was privileged to be around. Because if you go to Barnes & Noble or any bookstore, every single sales book is written by a car salesman or an insurance salesman. Name every sales trainer you know, they're a car salesman or sold insurance. That's going to do nothing for you as a contractor. Yes, there are some common themes and threads between every industry as it relates to sales, but contracting is unique. We're a logistical supply company. At the same time, we're a design company. We're a management and engineering company. We are very complex and unique in what we do. We're not going to be able to throw the mats in and give you a year's worth of car washes to close the deal. So those books really don't help you. Also, since everyone else is reading those books, you're going to sound like everyone else, which you're not going to stand out at all, which means you're going to blend into the crowd. You're going to be like everybody else, and then there's nothing special about you. Right? So it's very important to learn how to sell whatever it is your industry is selling from people in that industry. And that's why I'm so heavily focused on sales and negotiation in ALP, because I teach you how to sell contracting, not sell cars. There's a difference. And nothing against car salesmen. They just don't know how to sell contracting, and that's why it's not in the book. Like the whole angle of approach that I just explained to you, that's not in any book anywhere. That's just from experience, understanding that is how you close construction deals. And it's really more educating a person than it is anything else. When you're selling a car, you're not really educating. You're trying to find emotional pinpoints, and then you negotiate on price. That's not what you do in contracting. You're selling competent. You're selling a service of competency. So you need to be an expert. You need to have altitude. You need to be an authority figure to sell competent services. When you're selling a product that delivers the service, like a car, that's a different sale. You're not. You're selling the belief that you as a leader can coordinate manpower and material on time to deliver a project for these people. That's a totally different sale.
It's so you hit the nail on the head, because especially this is specifically with residential, right? Even more so with commercial, with the risk involved, but specifically with residential, customers and end consumers never ever regret spending $5,000, $10,000 more if the project is what they want. Whereas they will always regret spending $10,000 less when they're left with half a house, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, because we just touched on recruitment and the people and getting the right people in your contracting company to be able to scale. And we mentioned one of the most important aspects of that is your brand and how you look as a company.
Yes.
Can that help you close sales with customers as well?
No question about it. And another thing about building the brand on social, because social's so dynamic, remember, fortune's in the follow-up. Very rarely do you close a sale on the first visit. Okay, so they may want to get other pricing and things like that. And I'm always an advocate for that. Go ahead and get more pricing. What I always say is, do this. Go get prices from other contractors. But when you get the price, look out for a few things. And I will give them the playbook on things to look out for. And then say, okay, if you don't think you're satisfied and that they didn't check all the boxes that I'm telling you to look out for, then give me a call. Because I know that they don't. I'm already teeing them up already. Change order protection, general conditions, project management and supervision, a bunch of different variables. that they should be asking the contractor when they realize that he doesn't have that stuff baked in, or they don't believe that he does. And after you've asked him, he's only kind of backpedaling. Then I say, when you're not satisfied with those prices and those other contractors, then call me. That's how I always end the thing. And you always get the call back. Because what happens is after I leave and do that, the first thing they do is they go and Google you. The first thing they're going to do is look you up. And they're all on Instagram. They're all on social. And that's going to rank very high in your SEO. And they're going to click on that. And if you have a repository of content, they will sit there and devour it. And that's what I want. I want them sitting while they're watching TV at home as a family. I want them on their phones going through, listening to all my stuff and not looking at projects, hearing me talk about what could go wrong in projects and how I mitigate it. Giving value. So then they go, wow, I didn't even think of that. Look, this guy's got the answers to everything. Yeah, he's $10,000 more, but honey, this guy's the man. Plus, he's a celebrity. We didn't even know we had this guy in the house, right? Your competitor doesn't. All your competitor has is drone shots of him pouring concrete. Inherent in the fact that you have a contractor license, we believe you know how to pour concrete. We believe that you can get a sub that can do that. We don't care about that. Nobody cares about other projects but their own. They need to get to know you. So that's the other part of building a brand in social, that people will be able to devour your content and get to know you a lot more and be more comfortable with you when you actually do end up following up with them. But I just want to circle back to one more thing and just tell you that there are certain people that are price driven, depending on, how they grew up and their experience in life. They just only buy price. And then you're not going to get those people. This is a numbers game. That's why you need to have consistent lead flow. That's why you need to consistently get in front of a camera. You got to constantly be talking to people in marketing. That's how you get consistent lead flow. So you're not going to close every deal. And that's good. You don't want to close the guy who is only price driven. You don't want that headache in your life. You're going to have an issue getting paid. They're going to nitpick you on punch list. They're going to make you do all sorts of rework on punch list. You're going to lose money on punch list. They're going to hold back your final payment till that stuff's done. You don't want that headache. You want to deal with reasonable people that understand that they make an investment to get a return. And I'll tell you, those people are rich people. You're going to make your money solving problems for rich people. If you're working for people who are middle class, they only have a finite amount of money, and they're going to be more money driven than a rich person is. Rich people rich people have money because they either own businesses or they're a number 1, 2, or 3 guy in a business. They understand that they need to invest money to get a return. Rich people know that investment is key. Middle class people don't understand that investment is key because they never have accumulated enough money to make an investment worthwhile. Right? So they may not necessarily want to overpay or pay a little bit more to get better competency and make sure that it's done right. Now, that doesn't mean all middle class. Some guys have saved every dollar and they say, I want to put everything into this house. I'm willing to pay a little extra. That guy's an outlier. But most middle class are price driven. So I would stay away from them. And I would be working towards the rich people. Rich people in residential and businesses when it comes to commercial and government, because that's where the money is. And they understand investing for a return.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense as well. It will make things so much easier for you if you just go towards the higher end of the market and cater everything towards them. This has been amazing. We are reaching the last few minutes of the podcast. I'd like to thank you, Marshall, for coming on.
My pleasure.
The way I end the podcast now, I've stolen it shamelessly from a podcast called The Diary of a CEO. You might have heard of him, Mr. Stephen Bartlett, where basically he asks the guest to ask a question for the next guest that is coming on. So before I ask you that question, I'm going to ask you what in episode 1 Chris wanted to ask you. So Chris asked you, when is enough enough?
Well, that's determined on the person. And when we say enough, what are we talking about? Are we talking about money or are we talking about accomplishments? I don't think there's ever enough accomplishments. I always want to be of use. The 40-something-year-old talking to you today wants to be of use. Now, maybe when I'm 60, I'll say, listen, I've done everything I can, but I can't imagine myself ever wanting to be a useless person. As it relates to money, I would think I probably already have enough, to be quite honest. It's not about money at this point. It's about doing more. It's about my potential than it is money. When I was younger, it was about money. Money is very important, don't get me wrong. But I am not the guy who needs to have all the world's money. And there are some people that are like that. They need to just continue to push and be billionaires because they not only do they want their money, but they want your money too. I don't want your money. I want enough for me and what I'm doing to secure my investments and my family. And there's more than enough to go around for everybody. So that's the way I view it. Depends on what we're talking about.
That's an amazing answer. I love the fact that you pushed it more towards accomplishments rather than the financial aspect, because I think it's so true. All right. Last thing then. What? Yeah, go on.
I just want to give you some insight on that. When it comes to contracting, the money's already baked into the job, right? So I bid a job with 30 points in it. I know that I'm going to get 30-point return on this job if I do it according to budget. So I'm not focused on making money on the job. I'm focused on not losing money. So if I can meet my accomplishments to stay on budget, I know the money's already there. So that has forced me to think more about completing tasks and achievement rather than going out and making money, so to speak, because every job I win, the money's already in it. So I just have to not screw it up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of contracting. It's not like I've got to work you up, sell you, and then make sure that this investment thing works out and I'm on a profit sharing. Every job, I got 30 points in it. So I need to be focused on not screwing that up. So I'm more focused on being very efficient and delivering tasks and achieving tasks because I know that's directly related with the byproduct, that's money. And what I've learned in life is if you focus on delivering value and focus on achieving what your goals are, the money's there. I don't think about money. It comes in. The price is the price. Are you in or you out? Well, if you're in, then great. Now I need to deliver. And that's all I'm focused on is delivering.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's amazing. Right. What we'll end it with then, the next guest is going to be Mr. Gary Drake. So I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is a Beverly Hills contractor. So he is much like how we just ended the podcast. We were talking about selling to rich people. He does exactly does that. So What question would you like to ask him?
That's a tough question. What I'd like to ask him, I guess a question to ask him would be, are you doing everything that you can be doing to providing the best value for your customer?
That's a great question. I think that's what it comes down to as well, to become successful.
Definitely.
Amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you for your time, Marshall.
You bet.
I really do appreciate it. This has been an amazing podcast. I'm sure people have found it useful and valuable. Check out Marshall on all his socials. On Instagram, he's Real Marshall Wilkinson. You can, if you're on YouTube, you can check the description. All the links will be there. If you're on Instagram, you could probably find him on any of our recent videos. We'll tag him in anyway. But yeah, see you guys next time on the next episode.